which really amazes me because I'm from out of town. But I was born and raised in Hammond, and then moved away after I married, and our children were born in the Detroit area. So whenever we would come back to visit Grandma and Grandpa, they couldn't wait for the trains. My mother would deliberately try to get a train so the children could see a train. But yeah, right. And I did want to mention that our father came here when he was from Chicago when he was 5 years old, so that was like in 1898. And so the Hirsch family goes way back many years. And then we had an aunt and uncle who, Rothschild, who had a funeral home on Holman Avenue, just north of Harrison Park. It's still a funeral home, I believe.
Burns?
No, what's the name of?
Oxman.
Oxman. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Hirsch building.
That old elevator, did you know that?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember going in that elevator, yeah. Oh, and speaking of elevators, I can remember the elevator at Goldblatt's, and I don't know why, but somehow I sort of had a fear of elevators because of the elevator at Goldblatt's.
Was it a bit, why is it just didn't operate smoothly?
I don't know. I was a little girl, and maybe, the people were overwhelmed me, and I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Since you mentioned the trains, I thought you might laugh at this. Somebody asked my dad, "Why did you have so many children?" And he said, "We lived right across from the trains, and they went by so much that we couldn't sleep at night." And I wonder if any of you remember when President Calvin Coolidge came to town. He came and dedicated the Wicker Park back in, I was 13 years old then. And I walked from my house on Plummer to Plummer and Holman, and there weren't many people around though, but here he comes in this big limousine with this tall hat, and I waved at him, and I was so close to him I could almost touch him, and he waved at me, and I always remember that I waved at the President of the United States. Thank you.
Maybe you remember in our newsletter, I had a story about that at one time. And my dad was then working for the phone company where he worked for 48 years. And he was one of the young men that laid out the phone lines because the president had to have phone available in case of emergency. So after the wedding, he took my mother. He knew where the president would be alighting from the train on Holman Avenue. Took my mother in her bridal veil with flying in the wind because he had a convertible. He always loved cars. Ended up with a car museum and many prize-winning cars. But he took her to the station, and Mrs. Coolidge saw her first and poked the president and said, "Look at the bride and groom," and they waved, and I said, "Why didn't you get up there for your picture?" And then, of course, they came to Wicker Park, and we live right on the street that runs into it, Prairie, and Nolan's relative is one of the men with Mr. Minus and several other well-known men that bought the land from the Wickers, and built the clubhouse and the golf course. So Nolan was 3 then, and I wasn't born yet because my mother and dad got married that day. Nowadays, it's, the opposite. And so Wicker Park is meaningful to us. We're going to have our 50th wedding anniversary there next spring. And my mom and dad, went from the church to see the president, and then they went to Bodie's to get their pictures taken, which I have copies of. And our wedding, almost 50 years ago, Bodie took, and he took all our Hammond High pictures. And then he took both of our daughters. Well, he had a fellow working for him then, so he wasn't really doing it. But I just thought Mr. Bodie was wonderful and handsome and very talented, and he was known all over the U.S. Yeah.
All right. We got got 2 hands over on this side. Okay. Okay. Excuse me.
I said that we moved to Hammond in 1930, and we did live on Webb Street right across from Harrison Park, so I was very familiar with many of these places you're talking about. But one funny thing, I think, when I graduated from Hammond High with Lois here, Then I attended Standard Business College, which was in the little building right next to the courthouse. I can't even think of the name of the building, on the second floor. And buses and trains, I had to catch the bus on Webb Street between 6:30 and 7 in order to be at work over in Indiana Harbor by 8 o'clock. And so at that time, we waited for a lot of trains, and my parents gave me a lifetime subscription to Reader's Digest so that I could be reading that while we were waiting. And I still am getting it. That's since 1937. And they paid $25 for that lifetime subscription.
104th floor railroad crossing.
Right.
Okay. Did you want to speak? Yeah, the lady there said a Bodie studio. Do you know where that was located? Okay. Yeah. But wasn't there a studio right here where we're at now? Upstairs above the A&P store? There used to be an A&P store. I thought Bodie Studio was up there with the roller rink. They had a roller rink upstairs? Yeah. I went to school right across the street, All Saints, and we used to go roller skating above the A&P store. Right here is where it was located. And there was a studio, I thought it was Bodie's, but then I thought he moved from there down to State Street by the hotel. Just on the other side of Holman Avenue? Yeah. Yeah. All right, well.
What year was that?
Oh, I graduated. Everybody, I think we're getting to the point where everybody's had a chance to speak. We have some refreshments here. If you want to just go ahead and just, rather us do this any more formally, if you want to informally continue to talk, that's fine. We have the refreshments here. Also, from the commercial standpoint, we have publications for sale. Please buy. But memberships, yes, we have memberships to the society. We need more members. We appreciate everybody's support. I know John's got his hand up, but I'll let John be the last person to say something, and then we can just break for the refreshments.
Not only could you get clothing and shoes and such things, you could get food. I don't know how many meat markets there were between Holman and Soul Street, but I can remember Tittle Brothers and Tittles and Sons, and I think there was one more. These were really substantial food markets, and then you could get all the fruits and vegetables you wanted at Barton's. Barton's on Oakley and State Street, right there by the Union Hall, and they were there for years and years. And in the summertime, it was all open, and then in the wintertime, I guess they closed it up some way. Barton's. So you could eat as well as get your clothing.
Okay, again, I want to thank everybody. If you want to actually do any individual testimonials, I'm sure we can set you up in front of the camera and you can speak one-on-one to the camera if you want to. We appreciate that. Please enjoy the refreshments, and thank you very much for attending.
On Cherry Street in Hammond. Grew up in Hammond, moved away a couple times to Winnemac, Indiana and Muskegon, Michigan after I married Bob Sherby. But I was reflecting on years back and remember that we talked about Hammond being such a thriving city, and at years back, I can't remember the exact years, that Hammond had the largest downtown shopping area of stores and of people that shopped there outside of the Loop of Chicago.
Feelings of nostalgia run deep here in the Calumet region. Our history is of great joy and at times tremendous hardship. Now, WTV Productions of Hammond is proud to offer historic videos of Northwest Indiana. See images of our past in these remarkable historical and educational videos. Tape prices range from $15 to $25. For a free catalog, write WTV Productions, P.O. Box 4069, Hammond, Indiana 46324.